When did you first realise that you were good at chess and decided to take it seriously?
I think I was about, well, when I was 8, my brother used to teach me the game, and when I started beating him, he sort of gave up and I carried on. So probably around 10, I started winning stuff.
What sort of stuff?
Like local primary school stuff, and then I think I won the London under 12, and then people started taking notice. Like suddenly, when you're a good junior, Leonard Barden comes over to you and starts saying some encouraging words. That Leonard, who's a doyen of British chess, he's been writing a column for about 40 plus years, so he's always encouraged juniors. So if he sort of gives you a nod, then that's normally a good sign.
What did you say?
He normally says, there's a guy called Gary Kasparov, you might not have heard of him, but he's pretty good, but you need to try a bit harder. Obviously I didn't try hard enough.
Whose books did you like when you were a kid?
Well, when you're a kid, it was quite limited. I played my first tournament, and I was playing, these retired judges and what have you. And someone pointed out to me, maybe I should, go to the local library and book it. So my first book was things like MCO, Modern Chess Openings. So in future years, when I used to write books myself on openings, it was mainly geared from these things I learned when I was about 10 and 11. So in the old days, there wasn't internet, DVDs, what have you, so just very limited choice.
But did you have an idea in your mind of a chess hero like Kasparov or anyone like that?
I think I was growing up in that generation where the person on TV the most was Fischer, so we all thought Fischer was the most elite player, but he was also almost like a ghost straight away because he never played after 72. So it was kind of a weird situation. So you sort of vaguely like Karpov, but as he was from Russia, it just seemed so far away at the time.
There were quite a few other good players that were around everywhere at the same time, like wasn't Michael Adams sort of around a lot?
Well, Michael I saw a lot because I'm from the West Country and I used to see him at tournaments, and his dad would always say, oh, he's got to concentrate on his schoolwork. But that seemed to change when he started winning thousands of pounds. It was surprising. But yeah, I watched him at a tournament. He fell asleep during the tournament because he was doing his homework in between rounds and stuff. And we had this dilemma, like, should we wake him up or not? And the arbiter was scratching his head saying, what should we do? Is it legal to give him a nudge? And I was one of the many people laughing. But eventually he sort of roused himself and, as you might imagine, carried on to win the game. So it was kind of weird seeing him from a young age and knowing he would go to the very top. He ended up being the top 10 of the world for quite some time.
Did it affect your schoolwork?
Yes. Well, they always say it doesn't, but unfortunately parents, it does, because of course the time you spend on chess, you could be spending on maths and what have you. I think some of the kids who are just good at everything, it doesn't affect, but I think it does to a certain extent. I once had a teacher come up to me and say, Gary, do you have a problem with biology because you're never here on a Friday? Have I done something to upset you? I had to think about it for some time, but of course it was because I was playing weekend tournaments, so I wasn't there on Friday because I had to travel to those tournaments.
So did you go to university?
Yes, I went to Leeds University. I studied business studies, and like most chess players, we go to university to have a good time and play chess on the holidays.
Did you ever consider doing anything other than chess as your career?
I didn't. I do now. I'm thinking, well, maybe I should have done something else. But at the time, it seemed a good idea, because there wasn't any Russians around because Berlin Wall was still down, so you could earn quite a good living from chess.
It is very impressive to have such a good career from being an international master, not being a grandmaster, but you managed to get into so many different
Well, the
things.
difference with me, I think, was that I realised early on that I should maybe make proper income, so I started writing a lot, whereas a lot of my contemporaries just either suffered, from being poor or asked their mum and dad for more money. So I ended up writing books, and I did a few DVD videos in those days.
Well, you have maybe because you did business studies, but you have a bit more of a work ethic than a lot of chess players. You're a bit more serious and
I had a
market yourself.
That's right. I sort of realised you had to do that. I had a friend, Julian Hodgson, who was a top chess player. He actually got a job once, and by chance I found out one of the reasons he lost it was he was once staring at the computer, and nothing was happening. And he asked a colleague who I knew, and they said, Julian, you have to turn the computer on. So, it's true that a lot of chess players don't have that work ethic or even any idea. So it just certainly helps if you're a bit more switched on, then you appreciate how lucky you are to play chess.
But you also have your playing career, which has had some pretty good highlights. What are some of your biggest highlights of your playing career?
Well, people say to me it's when I beat Nigel Short at the Olympiad, because at the time he still is a big star, and I was playing for Australia where I'd moved after I got married. So it was like an Englishman versus Englishman, and of course Nigel was expected to win, and by chance or luck or skill, whichever way you want to look at it, I won, and everyone remembers it because ironically, he'd fallen out with the other English players at the time, so they were the first to congratulate me. But yeah, that was one of the highlights. But I've been lucky enough to beat quite a few grandmasters over my time, but that one, because it was a sort of a big tournament, it made more of an impression.
What do you think he did wrong or you did right in that game?
I don't know. He for technicality, he played 3-8-6 Matowers French, if you know what that is, which he then didn't play for about 5 years because he wasn't very impressed. The position was kind of equal, but he, I don't know. Sometimes it happens, get lucky. He wasn't overly pleased, of course, but these things happen.
What about winning the Australian Championship? Would you say was that pretty much your biggest success?
I suppose so. I mean, I moved to Australia, and I thought this is great. I can play this. But in fact, when I realised that maybe it wasn't going to work out when I said to them after a while, "Are there any tournaments on this week?" And they sort of said, "Yeah, there's one only 2 hours away." And I thought that's fantastic, only 2 hours. But then they said by plane, and I thought, this isn't going to. You see, you can't earn money and do both. So I entered the Australian Championship. They only takes place every 2 years, and I beat all the grandmasters in the country, which was at the time 2 of them, and 2600 performance. I won the tournament, and yeah, that's probably one of my best achievements, because whenever you win a national championship, it means they accept you at last.
And you get to play for Australia in the Olympiads, which you probably wouldn't have managed to do for England.
Well, in England, no, I might have had to move to another country. So played for a prestigious team at the Olympiad. I played 2002, 2004, 2006. I think it was 2004. I saw a little kid trying to enter late, and they refused to accept him and asked his father, and that was Magnus Carlsen. So yeah, you see all the famous people, Korchnoi and what have you. So it's the stars of chess.
And apart from the distance, what other differences are in the Australian chess scene to the British chess scene?
I think, thinking about it, they tend to want to play fast chess because they want it all over. It's if you have a weekend tournament in England, it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They just want it on 1 day or 2 days, as many games as possible. So it's a bit more, certainly more faster, and maybe less money, of course, but that's.
What about for juniors? Are you seeing lots of promising juniors?
There's loads of juniors. The difference is the tyranny of distance of Australia is now made easier because of the internet. So all these kids are playing the internet, and as we know, you can be in Paris, London or Sydney and still play top players. So they all play on the internet and get good like that. In the old days, Australia used to play correspondence chess, where I think they had the first ever correspondence champion in 57. But then a game would last for 3 years, and now it lasts for 5 years.
So also you must get a lot of satisfaction out of travelling with juniors and coaching them.
Well, you do. I mean, I've been lucky enough to coach English players and seen the likes of Garwayne Jones come from an 8-year-old to 26-50. As I mentioned earlier, Michael Adams, when he was very young. So it's kind of curious to see all these kids who are sort of famous in the chess world when they were just little enthusiastic kids.
What do you need to do with someone? It used to be Leonard Barden would have a word with you, but what do you need to do to really motivate them these days?
It's difficult. I mean, most of the time they're motivated if they have contemporaries who they want to beat. If they're just the signing star, then they can get a bit lazy. But so normally, if they have a bit of good old-fashioned competition, that helps. So if they go to a chess club where there's other juniors, they push themselves. And nowadays, it's so much easier on the internet, DVDs. Everyone's got chess space, for example.
Is it a good idea though to become a highly motivated young chess player these days? Would you recommend it?
Everyone I've met in Armenia, they say it's a great way to make a living. True, if you live in other societies, you can make more of a living doing other jobs. But I think if you're from a lot of my friends, they make money from, or they use it as a well-paid hobby, but they also get another job as well. So if you're from England, Australia, America, you can probably make more money doing something else. But it does no harm. It brings out more contacts, and you meet a surprisingly number of interesting people.
So here for the British Championships, how do you rate your chances this year?
My chances of winning, or
Right, winning.
well, I better not look at the odds. But no, but I mean, for me, it's like a high school reunion. You know, you go back, see all the old faces, swap a few tales. So I hope to do well, but it's also a social thing, you know. So it's a bonus.
You sometimes feel like you know too much about all the players. You know everything about their lives. Is it a bit too incestuous?
Well, you know, I think if you work for in any job, you know the office folk very well. It's the same for chess. You know, we all know stories about each other. Sometimes they're true, sometimes not. But that can be fun as well.
I've heard that you don't have a very good record against Mark Heverton. Is that true?
Well, Kevin, but he's the one who says it most often. No, I'm sure I probably haven't. Thinking about it, have I? But against other players, I've got equally good record. So it depends, and of course, classic with those is make sure that when you play good players, make sure you play them when they're under 12.
Are you very keen on these obscure gambits that you wrote about a lot, or is that just?
Well, I started off with Black Medina Gambit because everyone at my club played this, and I couldn't fathom a way to beat him. So that's where that reputation comes from. And I write a column for an internet thing called chesscafe.com, and the readers just love all these crazy gambits and stuff. And I always put a little thing saying, "Don't play this in tournaments, please." But they just love it. So I'm happy to do it. And with computer analysis, sometimes you can find these weird and wacky moves. Sometimes are quite good.
How did you start writing for Kingpin?
Well, I asked the editor, and he couldn't even remember. But I think he tried to buy some photographs of me, and we had a bit of a conversation. He said, and I said maybe I could do, I don't know, a sort of an agony column, and he said do it like Chess Chow, and I sort of nodded and agreed, but I'd never read Chess Chow. It's an American magazine, so I wrote my own version of that, and it proved successful. It's been going for over 10 years now.
Well, it's complete fiction, right?
Well, you should say that, but I still get angry people saying to me, is it true or is it false? I think I had some guy in Holland who rated me for not encouraging juniors, because there was one kid who wrote into the magazine saying, his father wrote in saying, my son's only 9, he's just scored 0 out of 6, but I've sent in his games, what do you think? I said, he may be 9, but he's still rubbish. And my friend said, how could you do this to this poor little lad? And so they didn't realise. Ken Wilde, the chess destroying once, wrote in complaining that that somebody had wrote in a fake game. The most famous one was, and now I realise it's famous, was that somebody wrote in saying, this game played in the first Harry Potter movie, where's it from? And I did my usual flippant reply, it was by an Italian master, 1966, doesn't everyone know that? In fact, I just looked up some random game, found a similar checkmate. But now I had these angry messages from a guy called Silman saying, no, I did it all. And about 10 years later, I found out this Italian is famous in Italy for having his game of the Harry Potter movie. In fact, an Italian historian sort of wrote to me and sort of thanked me for finding out this important fact, So, so people take it seriously, even though if you read between the lines, there's a bit of truth in it, but most of it, maybe misintelligent.
Do you think that Kingpin should stay as a print publication?
I think it's difficult, it's modern day, everyone's going online, but I think some people still like to read the printed thing, and of course there's a lot of people who aren't online, strangely as it might seem.
There is one really big question. This was referred to in your Wikipedia entry, well known because you actually have your own Wikipedia entry, which is evidence that you're actually famous, officially famous.
Well, officially famous, I'm just.
So it says that you're an avid Torquay United supporter.
Yeah, that's true. Torquay United, for those who don't know, is a football team who've never won anything. And we're a professional team. There's 92 professional teams in England, and we're normally at 91, 92. Yeah, so even now I live in Australia, I listen to radio commentary on them and see them whenever I can. So I'm a bit of a tragic, sort of supporting a team who failed.
Do you miss anything else about England?
The rain.